feel sorry for the fans. I feel sorry for the players, to be honest with you, because at this moment we're just a little bit under-equipped at this level from where we've come from for what we have, and it's been proved a bit difficult.
There we go. Well, Parker leaves Bournemouth having taken charge of 55 games. He had a win rate of 51% after leading Bournemouth back into the Premier League. And how about this? Parker becomes the joint 4th earliest managerial casualty in Premier League history, getting sacked after the first 4 games of the season. Only Christian Gross, Paul Sturrock and Sir Kenny Dalglish were sacked sooner. And let's have a look at what they've got coming up. Gary O'Neill will take charge of the team for the game against Wolves tomorrow night. Then it's a trip to Nottingham Forest before Brighton. Then they come up against a man they know well, Eddie Howe and Newcastle. Then it's home games against Brentford and Leicester. Well, there we go. It is the big story of the day, isn't it? Our reporter Marc McAdam has been following events at Bournemouth even before we knew this news at Bournemouth and Scott Parker. They were on your talking points for this morning. So let's have a look at some of the facts and figures that surround this. And it looks like it was going so well, that opening day win against Aston Villa, wasn't it? But then these 3 straight defeats since, that minus 14 goal difference in there as well. The worst in Premier League history after 4 games. But is it more than results behind this story today?
You're absolutely right to point out the results, and you're absolutely right to say it's more than just results with regards to the club's decision to sack Scott Parker this morning after just 4 games. And I think it's been alluded to in the statement as to why the club have decided to make this change so early in the season. They reflect on 2 things. The alignment of strategy is one thing that they mention, and being sustainable is the other thing that they mention. Let's take a look at the alignment of strategy, which is essentially...
because this is really powerful, isn't it? Because it doesn't take much reading between the lines to try and work out what Maxim Demin is saying here. He says, for us to keep progressing as a team and a club as a whole, it is unconditional. Unconditional is a strong word, isn't it? That we are aligned in our strategy to run the club sustainably. We must also show belief in and respect for one another. So what you read into that was they weren't aligned and there wasn't respect between Scott Parker and those higher in the club than him. It is the only way you can read that, isn't it?
And you're right to read it that way. I do genuinely believe results are irrelevant in this situation because of the alignment in strategy. The football club has a fan base of between 5,000 and 10,000. They sell out the Vitality Stadium, which is capacitated at 11,700. This isn't a football club that has years and years of history in the top flight. They don't generate millions and millions of pounds in worldwide sales. This is a football club that's progressing and developing, and therefore their recruitment strategy and the money they spend has to be reflective in the money they receive. They have to abide by FFP like all Premier League sides. They have to respect the rules, and that means they can't go into the market like Nottingham Forest and spend £170 million on recruiting new players. They have to grow it in the right way. They have to do it in the right way. And clearly the club's philosophy hasn't matched up with what Scott Parker would like to do in this transfer window. Something that's really important to point out is when they got promoted in 2015, they had just 3 players with Premier League experience. This was a new experience for the football club, for Eddie Howe, the manager, and for that group of players. Whereas this scenario is very different. Promoted at the second time of asking, they have 11 players that have played in the Premier League before. The spine of the team has played in the Premier League. The likes of Lloyd Kelly, the captain, Jefferson Lerma, Philip Billing, Ryan Christie's played in the Scottish Premiership. Mark Travers has Premier League experience. Adam Smith has Premier League experience. And so does Dom Solanke, right through the middle at the top, who got 29 goals in the Championship last season. Those are players that the football club haven't needed to buy again. Whereas in comparison to Nottingham Forest, they are players that they've had to go out and buy. They lost a lot of players, they had to recruit new players and build a side that they thought was capable of competing in the Premier League. Bournemouth's situation's very, very different. They already had a really strong squad. So that's one of the things. Being sustainable is the other thing as well. The football club knows it has to be really careful with the money it spends. It can't just go into the market and recruit big players and spend huge amounts of money on wages. They have to be sensible and sustainable, and that's something that's really important to the football club. And the other word that I just want to pick out there in that statement, respect. You have to respect everyone. This football club's whole philosophy has been built on one thing: together, anything is possible. Right now, it doesn't feel like they're very together.
And respect, as you said, was one of those key words in there. One of the key words after that 9-0 defeat, though, that Scott Parker used was under-equipped, was the phrase that he used there. So let's have a look at the summer signings. They've made 5, spending 26 million in the process here. So talk us through these and why is he saying they're under-equipped then?
Well, let's take a look, like you say, at the signings they've made over the course of this summer. They acted really early to get 2 players in. Ryan Fredericks from West Ham, a free transfer, who, of course, had Premier League experience. He was a part of that David Moyes squad over the last couple of seasons that had the success in the Europa League, finished 6th and 7th in the Premier League. So that's a really good free transfer. Someone that Scott Parker, funnily enough, played with at Fulham, so he knew him very well. Joe Rothwell was one of the most exciting midfielders in the Championship. They tried to sign him in January and then got him on a free transfer this summer, so that will be seen as a really positive, good signing as well. Marcus Tavernier, a player that was very highly regarded, probably Middlesbrough's best player last season. Chris Wilder was really sorry to see him go. They've picked him up for 12.5 million. When you start to look at midfielders like Morgan Gibbs-White, who played in the Championship last season at Sheffield United, going for 42.5, that looks like exceptional business once again. And then let's look at these last 2, and I love this. Bournemouth dealing with Barcelona and signing a Brazilian international in Neto on a free transfer, someone who could provide cover for Mark Travers, someone who could be the #1 at Bournemouth. Excellent signing there. They now have 3 really good class goalkeepers. And then Marcos Senesi, another player that was very highly rated, just broken into the Argentina side from Feyenoord for £13.5 million. When you look at those 5 signings, you've got a good mix of experience, knowledge and age. You've got young potential, you've got experience, you've got international experience, and £26 million are spent. What does that mean, though, Rob, when you look at the whole squad options? I know that Scott Parker has mentioned on a couple of occasions that the squad is a little bit threadbare, but this would perhaps say otherwise. We've mentioned the goalkeepers there. Travers, hugely promising goalkeeper with a good little bit of experience in the Premier League, but was key for Bournemouth last season. Neto, enough said about a Brazilian international. Let's look at the defensive back line and the options they've got there. Jack Stacey's played in the Premier League, so has Ryan Fredericks. Mepham, Wales international. James Hill, England under-21, hugely promising. They brought him in from Fleetwood in January. Senesi and Kelly the captain, someone that's played in the Premier League as well, someone that's been linked with moves away from Bournemouth for in excess of £30 million. And then at the left back, Adam Smith, former Tottenham Academy product, someone who has been on the whole journey with Bournemouth. He was in the Premier League side for that 5 seasons. He can play at right back. He can play at left back. Jordan Zamora was the surprise package for last season. Perhaps wouldn't have got his opportunity if it wasn't for a few injuries and a few sales. He's been brilliant. Played for the Bournemouth under-18s under Alan Connell. He's come through the setup. He proved himself to be a top-class Championship player and really, really exciting. He's done well so far in the Premier League. Then you go into midfield. Jefferson Lerma, Colombia international. Phil Billing, international. Joe Rothwell. Pearson, of course, who they took from Preston. Lewis Cook won the World Cup as an under-17 for England. He's been brilliant. He had a fantastic campaign last season, getting them out of the Championship. And of course, someone with Premier League experience again. And then you get through into the attacking options. Anthony. Jadon Anthony's the same as Jordan Zamora, someone that came through that's not Anthony of Manchester United there.
He's taken a little change in route.
Yes. Jadon Anthony, another young, promising player that's come out of the Bournemouth Academy, played with the under-18s and the under-23s, worked with Sean Cooper, who's now involved in that trio of players that are taking, ex-players that are taking the reins at the moment. David Brooks, that's the brilliant name to see. You know, diagnosed with cancer. He's gone through that journey, back in full training with the football club. He was linked with moves to Manchester United not long ago for £45 million. That's how exciting and promising he is. Now, of course, there's no pressure on his shoulders. He's just signed a new contract at the football club, but great to see him once again in the mix here. Jamal Lowe, who scored crucial goals for them to get into the Premier League. Ryan Christie from Celtic. Emiliano Marcondes, who they signed on a free transfer last summer. Someone that was huge for Thomas Frank and Brentford. You know, they loved him at Brentford. And then you come over here to Junior Stanislas, more Premier League experience, of course. A few injuries at Tavernier, we've spoken about him. And then up front, Dominic Solanke, who scored 29 championship goals last season. Once again, Premier League experience. Kiefer Moore, who's done it on the big stage, is a big part of what Wales are doing as well. Good experience in the EFL. And Siriki Dembele as well, who's another player potentially heading out of Bournemouth in this window. He's been a bit of a fringe player. But what you're looking at there are a great bunch of options, Premier League experience, a little bit of pace and energy. There's some good youthful energy in there as well. And you look at that, and yes, of course, it's going to be a challenge in the Premier League this season. But there are options there that make you more than comfortable that they can be competitive. Will it be difficult for Bournemouth this season? Absolutely. But are there players there that can give it a good go? Definitely.
Yeah, but this has been a squad, whether you think they're under-equipped or not, and you've gone through every player and show how they are equipped. So it's a debate, and every manager will want new players. That's a given. But whoever comes in, these aren't their players, are they? And we've got 2.5 days,
that's it,
give or take 46 minutes until the window closes, and the search for a new manager now begins. Bournemouth have a particular, not only ethos, but a particular style. Is that key in who they appoint? Because there are managers out there who are well adept at keeping teams up in a certain way, but that doesn't seem to fit the Bournemouth philosophy. Is this a interesting challenge as well, to find the right fit manager?
This is the big challenge now for the sporting director, Richard Hughes, the chief exec, Neil Blake, and of course the owner who released that statement, Maxim Demin, to find the right manager who can come in and adopt the philosophy and culture of what Bournemouth is about. They've always been a team that wants to play attacking football, expansive, exciting football that uses the full width of that big Vitality Stadium pitch. They want to score goals and they want to develop young players. That was almost a philosophy that was brought into the football club under Sean O'Driscoll back in 2000, 2001. They took Jermaine Defoe on loan from West Ham, who was a young 18-year-old striker who they saw with huge potential. They wanted to mould and develop it. Sean O'Driscoll was the manager then. That fed into Eddie Howe, who was a player under Sean O'Driscoll. That's fed into the assistant manager who was at Bournemouth, Jason Tindall, and everyone that's been around the football club, those that are currently in charge of the football club, taking the caretaker reins. Gary O'Neill never played for Bournemouth but has been around for a number of years. Sean Cooper and Tommy Elphick, who was the captain in 2015 when they got promoted to the Premier League, are the three men that are currently caretaker charge of this team. So they need to find someone that understands the DNA of Bournemouth, what the philosophy and what the remit is. Of course, they're going to have very little time should they appoint someone between now and Thursday. But what they have got in charge of the recruitment are two men that have been working together for in excess of 10 years in Richard Hughes and Neil Blake. They've got a lot of transfer experience. They've dealt with some of the biggest agents in world football. They've recruited players. You have to remember when they got relegated from the Premier League, they bought Callum Wilson for 3 million, sold him for 20 million. They bought Nathan Aké for 20, sold him for 41. They bought Aaron Ramsdale for 800,000 and sold him for 21 back to Sheffield United. The people running Bournemouth, when it comes to recruitment, have got a huge pedigree and experience of knowing what to do in the transfer market. So regardless of who sat in the hot seat and who the manager is, I'm more than comfortable looking from the outside that they have the right people in place that can recruit the right type of players between now and Thursday's deadline to give that squad an even better chance of being successful this season. Let's look at some of the early runnings. Now, of course, Sean Dyche, immediately someone who's got Premier League experience, who's out of work. I can't see that fit quite being right. Chris Wilder is another name that's second in the running at the moment, someone that would adopt the philosophy, play the right type of football, someone that showed what he has as a manager at Middlesbrough last season. Of course, this season hasn't started particularly as he'd have hoped for. It's been a challenging transfer window for him, but another manager that would certainly fit the mould of what Bournemouth were looking for. And then when you look down the list, you've got the likes of Neil Warnock and Harry Redknapp and Tony Pulis and people that have been, you know, in and around the game for a number of years, and Harry and Tony have managed Bournemouth in the past as well. I can't see something like that happening. I think the football club will take this decision patiently. They'll be measured with their thinking and what they want to do. They'll wait for the right man. They spent a long time watching Scott Parker before they eventually asked him to become the manager, and they'll do exactly the same here. The problem is time is running out. This season is going to be hugely different to others because of the World Cup being in the middle. There are a huge chunk of games to be played between now and November the 12th, when you have the last run of games. And what you don't want to be is cut adrift by 7, 8, 9, 10 points by the time of the World Cup, because that 6 weeks of trying to enjoy England and Wales playing on the highest stage won't be great if you're 10 points adrift in the Premier League. So I think they'll be looking to make a quick appointment, but it will be well thought through.